Hi, I'm John Felt, and welcome to the weekly water outlook for November 18th, 2012. Let's take a look at how much rain fell across the nation last week. And what you can see here, this is rainfall over the last 7 days. Very little rain fell over broad parts of the nation, and areas that received rain, with the exception of the far Pacific Northwest and California coast, was very light. A very broad part of the nation received very little rain. This whole area here received no rain whatsoever, maybe some light showers here and there. Maybe a little bit of light rain. This green is anywhere up to about an inch, so some significant rain here in this axis right here. A couple little streaks of 2 inches of rain, and then we get some pretty light rain over the eastern part of the nation as well. But for the most part, I think the story is very light rain over broad parts of the nation. And what you can see here is below normal rainfall. Red is anywhere from 0 to 25% of normal rainfall. And there were some pockets of above normal rainfall in the Ohio Valley, parts of Missouri, also parts of California and the Pacific Northwest. Now, I show the drought monitor quite often, and I thought I'd show a different drought monitor, or drought index, and this is the SPI, or Standardized Precipitation Index. This is over the last 60 days, and what I wanted to show here is really how dry it's been from a precipitation standpoint for the last 60 days. The red is showing the deeper the red, the more the below normal rainfall, and the more drought conditions, and the SPI is showing widespread well below normal readings for the last 60 days over parts of the west and the middle part of the nation, as well as the southeast U.S. Now, the difference between the drought monitor and the SPI is only based on precipitation. The drought monitor is based on a number of different impacts, such as river flow, agriculture, as well as rainfall. Okay, so these are some of the factors that we're going to be looking at this week. The low that's been off the Pacific Northwest for a number of weeks now, this low here, is really driving the weather across the Pacific Northwest. It's streaming this flow into this region. It's enhancing rainfall and snow in the higher elevations of this region. And I don't see any signs that that's going to let up this week. That's really been well established, and that will continue. Throughout the week, what we're going to have is a jet stream moving in through California, weak area of low pressure off of the east early in the week. And by the end of the week, the main difference is we're going to have a very weak impulse. And I've sort of noted it here on Thursday. And this weak impulse is going to be moving along this flow. I've been watching that real carefully because depending on how strong that is, the stronger it is, the more it can pick up moisture and produce some rain over areas that are very dry. Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be a very, very weak impulse and not going to be able to pick up much moisture. So even though there will be some rain, the amounts are going to be very weak, very light, not all that significant. But still, there is something to watch and maybe produce some rain for areas that haven't received rain for a number of weeks. As far as teleconnections go, I've been keeping an eye on the Arctic oscillation. It's been, after a period of below normal, it has gone over to above normal now. This is the normal line, so anything above that is positive. There are some of the models now that are indicating it's going to stay neutral for the rest of November, at least through the next week, and then perhaps go back to negative. And if it does that, that's possible that the trough over the eastern U.S. could again deepen. We could get some cooler temperatures in that region, and the west, unfortunately, would stay dry and above normal temperatures. The jet stream for the 6 to 10 day, I have this here, and for the most part, this is a little bit further out than the last graph I showed. It shows a fairly tranquil west to east flow, no strong dips one way or the other, fairly well spaced out. There'll be some systems in there, some weak systems, but right now it doesn't look all that significant. And I would say right now it looks like a fairly quiet pattern as we round out the month of November. Now, model output as far as precipitation, week 1, high confidence. Very heavy rain, chance of flooding, significant snowfall over the Pacific Northwest, and then pretty much everywhere else below normal rainfall. I think next week when I do this broadcast, there'll even be more red across the nation. You can see where the precipitation is. The models are forecasting it to occur over the central part of the U.S., sort of this axis right here, with that system that's coming through. But man, these are very light amounts of rainfall. They're very insignificant overall. Now, I'll be watching that throughout the week. I will be issuing an update on this in my weekly blog that I issue. Perhaps that could change a bit, but right now I'm not really all that impressed. It's just too weak. Sort of interesting week two. Week two looks a little bit more active as we get into early December. Although when you see these, keep this in mind that week two very frequently flip-flops. You can look at these models and from one time to another. So I don't usually call a trend until I get some confidence over numerous model runs or different models that it's coming up to a similar solution. So right now I wouldn't get too excited about that. But I will say oftentimes when you get this Pacific Northwest flow pattern and then you get this axis here, those ones can be somewhat related. So, perhaps that might come true to some degree, but right now I think it's a little bit too early to get too excited about. Quick update, the ENSO, or the El Nino La Nina Southern Oscillation Index, was updated this last week. I wanted to show you that we're just a bit above zero right now, about 0.3 or 0.4 positive anomalies. And as we go through the winter months, most of the models are showing a fairly good concurrence that we're going to stay pretty much through that similar range from about 0.1 to about a 0.4 through the winter months. And that's what we've been saying for quite some time, that for the most part it looks like it's going to be a neutral winter as far as ENSO. I did get a question, and I always welcome your questions. If you have any questions, send them to me, and I'd be glad to try to bring them into a briefing or one of my emails that I send out. But the question was, what are the chances of going into another La Nina? And what I wanted to show is through the winter months, it's really, at least from the model standpoint, it's pretty low. The blue is the La Nina, and you can see it's very low probability of going into that. Now, it is rising, so as we get into next summer, it's a little bit higher. This is only at 20%, but by far, look at the probabilities of neutral conditions. These are above 70%. This is a January, February, March, April time frame. So at least from the models right now, this is why I'm saying there's a strong consensus and strong probability of not going back into a La Nina. It might go into negative. It might go to minus 0.1. That's not out of the question. But to get below minus 0.5 right now is looking very unlikely. So as with that week one, this goes through much of the rest of the month, 18th through the 26th. The forecast soil moisture changes. You can see that there's a little bit possibility with that first system moving through of maybe a little bit more soil moisture over increase in soil moisture over parts of Texas. That axis, I think pretty much the best case scenario with that is pretty much holding its own, not getting worse rather than any improvement. Significant increase in soil moisture over the Pacific Northwest. And then pretty much everywhere else continue dry with very slow decreases in soil moisture. Some of the trends and threats. Let's start off with the threat. Another 1 to 3 inches average, and I think there will be reports of much higher than that precipitation and in the form of rain and snow over the Pacific Northwest. Pretty much over the broad part of the central part of the nation and the southeast U.S., well below normal precipitation this week, 25% of normal or less. And I've outlined that very modest rainfall in yellow. We're not talking about much, but at least there is the possibility of some rainfall in that area later this week that could help in some way, but again, I think it's going to be very modest. So the takeaway points, flood threat, Pacific Northwest, 1 week system through the middle of the nation later this week. Overall, continued dry for large parts of the country and continuing soil moisture deficits. Now, I know many people are listening to these recordings. I urge you to consider subscribing at bluewateroutlook.com. I issue a lot more information throughout the week. I will be issuing my December newsletter on the 1st or very close to the 1st. Lots of information on water and climate in that. And I do have coverage of big events, so I encourage you to subscribe. If I won't be talking to you then, I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, and I want to personally thank you all for being subscribers to Blue Water Outlook. Again, thank you for listening, and I will be updating this next week.